Canada is heading into an election campaign just as a major foreign policy failure spirals out of control in Afghanistan. The Taliban has declared victory. Kabul has been captured. Canada is heading into an election campaign at this very same time. And the president of Afghanistan fled the country. It marks the culmination of a stunning Taliban offensive that saw them take control of nearly the entire country in just a few weeks. Flights out of Kabul have been suspended, leaving thousands of Afghans stranded in the capital. Marc Garneau is Canada's Minister of Foreign Affairs. Minister Garneau, thank you for joining us. The U.S. had warned the Taliban if Afghanistan was taken by force, it would not be recognized internationally. Will Canada refuse to recognize a Taliban government?
Well, thank you, Katie, for the question. I would say to you, it's early days. Right now, we want to see what happens. The country has essentially surrendered to the Taliban. The Taliban is saying that it wants to run as a government, but we're going to wait and see. It's too early to answer that question.
You're waiting to see. Are you going to treat the Taliban with credibility?
Well, we have to see how they behave since they have taken over the country. Certainly, their behavior was totally unacceptable for the short time that they were in charge after the Russians left about 20 years ago. So we'll wait and see.
Canada provides hundreds of millions of dollars in support to Afghan security forces. Are we suspending that aid?
Our hope, of course, is to continue development aid. Minister Gould announced $270 million over 3 years. We'd like to be able to continue that because we care deeply for the Afghan people themselves and all the things that we've tried to do to improve the lives of women and girls and education and build institutions. We'd like to be able to, but there's a great deal of uncertainty at the moment. So we're, again, going to have to see what it's like under the Taliban regime.
So that's development aid. That's one thing. But what about the money that Canada pays into to support the Afghan security forces? Does Taliban take control of that funding? What happens there? Or are we pausing it? What happens there?
Well, there we will have to obviously reassess. The security funding that we had was to try to build the capacity under the government of the police and security forces in the country. And of course, it's a totally different situation now. So that is something that we're going to have to definitely be thinking about because it's a totally different situation now.
The Prime Minister has said more military flights to evacuate Afghans will go to Kabul if the airport is secured. Will Canada send a high readiness battalion to help secure the airport?
That is a decision that would be made by the Minister of National Defence, but that is not currently our intention. The intention is to try to work with both the United States and the UK, who have sent large numbers to secure the airport. And our hope is to be able to integrate into the air bridge so that we can get as many Afghans who will qualify under the special immigration measures out of the country for as long as we can, for as long as the airport can be used.
I want to ask you a question about that in just a moment, but for logistics, there are so many people who are watching this and want to know what is happening to those Afghans who did help Canada during the Canadian years in Afghanistan. But one thing I want to ask you before we get into that is, can the people who do qualify to come to Canada, can they be carried out on flights by our allies?
That's always a possibility, and that's something that is being discussed with our allies to try to get as many out as possible, either on our aircraft. And by the way, if we're integrated into the air bridge, we may bring some of their people. But all of this remains to be confirmed. But that is what we are trying to do. And we will try to get as many out as we possibly can. Now, we're not going to be able to get everybody out. But as you know, we made the engagement that over time, we have committed to bringing 20,000 Afghans to Canada. And that is something that we are going to live up to.
As far as we know right now, there are roughly hundreds of people who helped Canada during the war, and there are frantic efforts by veterans to try and get them to safety. But at this point, it appears they are stranded and they could very well die. How did this go so wrong?
So we have evacuated about 800 people, and we hope to evacuate more. And also, because of the announcement we made last week, for up to 20,000 Afghans, there will be the option of Afghans who qualify for this, those whose lives are at threat, not only those who worked with Canada, but also groups such as women activists and LGBTQ minorities and other ethnic minorities within the country. The option is there for them to also apply through neighboring countries. And that, you have to realize that there are tens of thousands of Afghans who have left the country, and that option, if they qualify, will be there for them, and that will occur over a longer time frame, but it is something that will allow us to bring those 20,000 Afghans eventually to Canada, and that's something that is very much part of the whole process for the 20,000.
But with respect, sir, I'm talking about the interpreters and other staffers, Afghans who helped Canada during the war, Canadians who would not have been able to carry out their mission and the work they did on the ground. There is such a growing frustration among veterans, particularly in this country, that these people are stranded. At one point, some of the bureaucratic hurdles they had to go over required reliable internet and extensive time in a safe place to be able to actually complete this paperwork. It's a war zone over there. Is there anything you would have changed about the process? Because there are hundreds of people who are over there and could likely die because of the work they did for Canada. Is there anything about the process that Canada implemented that you regret?
Absolutely not. Let me say right away that we have tried to streamline the process to make it as quick and as simple as possible, much different from normal asylum application processes. Secondly, we have had some challenges with respect to the Afghan government insisting that everybody, instead of having a quick exit document, had to have a passport. And that is something that the Afghan government made a decision on in order to allow those people to leave. That is something that complicated the situation. And thirdly, let me just say that everybody, all intelligence communities underestimated the speed with which the Taliban moved in to take over the control of the country and how quickly the Afghan military were ready to surrender. So those are things that nobody anticipated and that created the situation where things accelerated much more quickly, even though we were in the process of taking care of all of the people that you mentioned, the interpreters and others, and I can understand the frustration, but this has happened very, very fast, and we have tried to deal with that reality as quickly as possible to get as many of the eligible Afghans out of the country as possible, and we will continue to do that.
Here's the thing, Minister. When you look at the work that's going on right now, do you think the Canadian government has done a good job to help get these interpreters out?
Yes, I do. I think that we have done everything possible to try to streamline the process to make it happen as quickly as possible. We unfortunately had to deal with the requirement for passports, and I think all countries, and you can see our allies as well, who are also working very hard to get people out, everybody underestimated the speed with which the Taliban took over the country and how quickly the Afghan military folded.
I get that this is a worst case scenario right now, but was Canada not prepared for the worst?
I believe that we reacted properly and according to all of the intelligence that we had, and with the intention of getting as many people out as possible who had worked for Canada, whether it's interpreters, whether it is locally engaged staff at the embassy or former locally engaged staff, and also Canada as the only country in the world to have done so. We broadened it to a larger category, as you know, with women activists, LGBTQ, and ethnic minorities. So Canada is doing the right thing to try to help in a very difficult situation.
One last thing I have to ask you about, it's another issue, it's China. Do you have any clarity from China about whether Michael Spavor will have to serve 11 years in prison before he'll be deported? Have you had any clarity from China on that?
Well, we are seeking clarity, but no, the answer is we have not had any feedback from the Chinese government.
Any clarity on why Michael Kovrig case has not moved forward yet? We've seen Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig. Everything has gone along sort of this similar path. Any update on when you're expecting his verdict and as well as sentence?
Well, obviously, we want to hear that as soon as it's possible. But so far, no, we have not been given any indications by the Chinese government when they will be ready to do the sentencing and verdict on Michael Kovrig. But we'll be ready for it.
You've been working with the U.S. to try to seek the freedom of Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor. It's been nearly 1,000 days. You're working with the United States, but so far it hasn't worked. How much longer can you stick with this strategy?
We believe that we've adopted the right strategy, which is a multiple approach strategy. First of all, specifically with respect to securing the release of the two Michaels, but also on a broader stage, sending the message to China, and a growing number of countries have joined us in sending the message to China that you cannot arbitrarily detain the citizens of another country. And so we will continue with all the work that we're doing on both those fronts, and we remain optimistic that we're going to be able to resolve this in due course, and that's my number one priority. I've made that very, very clear from the beginning.
Minister, thank you for your time today.
My pleasure.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.